So welcome to Learn to Listen. I'm so excited to have you both on the show today. For our listeners, we are joined by Sophie and Lexi, and they are both Orr Fellows alongside with me. It's how we met, and I'm so thankful, so grateful to the Orr Fellowship for giving us that connection. And they are here today to talk about everything in life, everything they've learned, them as a person. They also started their own nonprofit called LUMA Galleries, which they'll get into, but welcome both. I'm so excited to have you here today. So we're going to kick it off. Lex, let's start with you. Give a background description of LUMA as well would be great.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Yay. So my name is Lexi Andrie, and I originally grew up in a small beach town in California. I moved out here to Indiana to attend college in South Bend. I went to St. Mary's College, majored in political science and minored in justice studies and sociology. And then I moved to Indianapolis for the fellowship where I met both you and Sophie, which I'm also very grateful for. So yeah, Sophie and I actually started the process of launching this nonprofit last year, almost a year ago, actually, last June or July. And we launched a 501c3 nonprofit organization called LUMA Galleries with the main mission of illuminating the human experience. And we do that by combining personal narratives through the arts. So yeah, it's been a journey, and we've learned so much in the process. And it's just been great to get to know like so many people in the Indianapolis arts community alone, and also just tap into our own personal and professional networks that we've been given from the fellowship itself. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
It's wonderful. Thank you. And so
hi everyone.
Hello.
My name is Sophie Wang, and I was born and raised in Indiana. Although I would like to share that my parents immigrated from China, so I do have that like piece of my identity growing up Chinese American. And I went to Indiana University, so I studied marketing and contemporary dance. And then I moved to Indy, and I had no idea what was in store for me when I moved here, but it has been a wild ride so far.
Yes.
Okay. And I've been being a part of the fellowship, as well as having, a 9-to-5 within the tech space, has been rewarding, yes. But what has like fueled me and kept me grounded and feeling passionate and energized has been starting LUMA with Lex. And we have just evolved so much. I don't know if you wanted me to get into
Heck yeah.
Okay. I will do so. So I want to be as candid as I can. Radical candor is one of our values. And essentially, when we moved here in the summer, I was kind of thinking and dealing with two things. So one was I'd been thinking a lot of someone who had taken their own life not too long ago. And I had grown up with this person. His name was Owen, and I knew his family and all of this. And so it was just really surprising news. And it just made me think a lot about suicide and the fragility of life, and like the power of being together, like togetherness is everything.
Yes.
And so I was kind of grappling with that, and I was talking to my therapist. We love therapy. And
We're therapy stands.
Yes. And I kept saying in our sessions, like, oh, I want to take action. I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. And the options that were posed to me were like good options, but I just didn't feel like it was like the right thing for me. So that paired with really thinking about like my long-term career goals, like what I could do, no cap,
Yeah.
That to me was kind of creating an organization that amplified people's personal stories, and did that through all these different mediums and in really engaging ways. And so in college, I did this project where we launched an art gallery, much smaller scale, just for a specific organization. And I thought, what if I brought that project back 2.0, scaled it to the indie community, and worked with really amazing people. And at the same time, I really kept Owen in my mind along the way. And we were super intentional about what types of stories we were telling and what kind of conversations we wanted to promote. And so from there, very early on, I mentioned it to Lex, and I don't know if you can describe it from like your perspective, like how I even.
Yeah, I remember it was we lived in the same building our first year when we went to Indianapolis. And so I remember just being in Sophie's living room and she was telling me like, hey, I'm working on this passion project and I just want to tell you about it. And she just dove into like how she launched her college project and her main goals. And like when she was speaking, like all I can remember is like, wow, like she views life like the same way I do. It's about like that intentionality factor, like it's being present in the moment wherever you are, whoever you're with. It's about that connection with one another, because that's really what like gets you going, and that's really what like makes life worth living. And I think we forget that sometimes because it's so easy to get caught up in our own worlds, and life is hard, it's stressful, and it's messy, and sometimes we do like close ourselves off. But this whole project that Sophie was describing, like I just remember seeing it like in the long term, and even like in the past year, I can't still imagine how much we've already built it. And so it's really like tapping into those community voices. And like both Sophie and I are new to the Indianapolis community, and so what better way to do that than to like find people who do fit our core values as an organization and hear their stories in order to like promote this more like social cohesion within the Indianapolis community by intertwining the arts and just like people you would never even know like had such an amazing story with them. So I remember that day, and I saw the long term, and I said, yeah, count me in.
Yeah, exactly what you said. You're like, I'm in. How can I help? Where can I plug in? How can I support? Oh my gosh.
And then at one point, like Sophie and I were, because we started with a team, and then it scaled down to the two of us, and we were operating.
Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like it was just a 2-woman tag team, and we were moving, and we were chugging along, and it built up some momentum to like be able to further expand our team and really like tackle like what we actually wanted to do. Which is actually upcoming because it's not done yet.
Yeah. But that's what's so fun. You get like in the thick of it, like, you know, there's still so much, of course, that you guys are gonna do with LUMA. But like, I think that's why I was so excited to have you both on at this moment, because there's things in the future which we're gonna get to, and there are things that you guys have already accomplished that have been so great. And Lex, what you were saying about like the social cohesion and the like, I think like the essence of being able to take people's different stories and like see the things that differentiate it, but then also see what connects it. Like, that's why I absolutely love.
That's a bar.
And that's why we're here. No, literally that is why we're here, because that's why I love podcasting so much, is like, and learn to listen, just the whole atmosphere of taking someone's story and being able to like see the similarities and the differences. And that kind of goes into what I wanted to discuss. We're of course going to get into like all the ins and outs of LUMA, but I want to talk about kind of like your own persona before we bring that into like LUMA, because I think like you two are both very stable, strong, like workers, women, and people, like just in general. And
really
so
stable.
Okay, we can get into that too. We'll definitely dive in, but that's the next one. But so I wanted to like get in kind of, where did both of you, and it's okay if you're not even sure, but like start to get that like self-awareness factor, or even like start to really understand where your like personal needs, your personal boundaries, like where each of those come from. Because like for me specifically, it was in college when I finally like sat down and I was injured in rowing, and I was like at probably one of my worst life moments. And that's when I was like, okay, I woke up to the fact of like, you need to take care of yourself. You need to be very vocal about your own needs. And you two are such strong friends and women who do that. Like, you do not back down when you're like, I need a night to like relax, recharge, like refill my cup. And so because both of you are such like you both embody that so well, that I wanted to ask like, where, if you can pinpoint where you think like that awareness came from.
Yeah, I'll start actually. So personally, I think that self-awareness had come up really fairly young for me. I was adopted, and I found out the whole truth half the truth when I was like 7. And so it like reshaped my identity again, because I knew I wasn't from my parents. And then when I was 13, I was told the full story. And so my identity was reshaped again. And I feel like I was constantly grappling at like strings to figure out or like put it together to try to like form this human being that I thought I was supposed to be, while taking like components of who I was or who I wanted to be or who others wanted me to be. Like it was just a very like jumbled up ball of like mess almost. And so I think that I forced myself to kind of to grow up fast, because I wanted to be like that best person for my parents, for like my people. But it came at a cost for me, because that left me with stripping and restripping my identity. And so and then putting myself in situations that reinforce those like negative values that I held to myself. And so being faced with things like that back to back to back really forced me to be like, okay, I need to learn how to love myself for what I bring to the table. And I think it's been a lifelong process for me. Like, I don't think I'll ever stop learning about myself. And I think that's so great. But I must admit, I've seen personally the most growth in myself within this past year. And I think I saw it in college, because I was finally out of my parents' reach. But I was still kind of stuck in that, like going to school every day, like maybe not making the best choices. But when you're forced into like your own independent lifestyle, you have to do what's right. Like you have to be responsible, and you have to like act accordingly, or you'll face the consequences at the end of the day. And so I really think that pushing myself to the limit by juggling this 9-to-5 job, by becoming a kitten mother, by launching this nonprofit with like my best friend, it's possible. It's hard, but it's like also has pushed me to be the best person I think I could be at this given point of time in my life. And I don't think that's done. I don't think it's maxed out at all. And I think that potential is kind of a myth, because you'll never reach it if you don't stop improving. And I always think that there's room for improvement. But with that being said, I had to learn how to control my emotions and to at least control my reactions, because I'm allowed to feel as however I feel, but how I reflect that towards others or in my interactions with others is what really defines who I am. And I want to be a person who acts with kindness and who cares for others, and I guess gives this really warm presence, because people are so important, and the people I've met in this past year alone have become significant people in my life that I hope to like hold on for the rest of it. And I intend to keep it that way. And so by being the person I am now means making all those right decisions towards like the better version of me. And if to keep these people around me and also just to keep improving, I will be doing that. Just that, I guess.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was rant.
That was beautiful.
No, I love it.
I could listen to that forever, huh? Don't
We're just
cut the
gonna-
loop now.
We're just gonna pass the mic on.
I'm like, do we just go off
That's
camera
it.
now?
That's
Like,
it. Yeah. Lex,
Wow.
your TED Talk. Okay, amazing.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's phenomenal. There's so much to dive in there, and
Yes.
I am so eager to do so, but I'm gonna hold myself back and ask the same question to you, Soph, so that we can make sure that we dive into all of it together.
Aw, okay. Well, I would say that a lot of what you say resonates with me. I think ownership of writing your story and rewriting your story, and knowing that that's like the past doesn't define you, like what you like, the future is like endless possibility, like all of that. So I really resonate with that, and I appreciate you for being vulnerable, and vulnerability is courage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Part of our expression here at Learn to Listen. So I love that.
Oh, yes, I totally have seen that. Absolutely. So I think for me, what pops into my mind when you talked about things like boundaries, strength, resilience, leaning into your identity, authenticity, is probably the fact that for as long as I can remember, I have this chronic illness. And I think that although having something like this has been traumatic, has been ugly, has been something that I've held a lot of shame around because I didn't tell people about it. Whenever I would be gone, they would just be like, oh, like, where were you? I'd be like, oh, I was sick, but like just gloss over it as soon as possible. I think that it has also deeply shaped the person that I am and how I live my day-to-day life, because I prioritize my health as number one, period. I know my non-negotiables. My non-negotiables are also my triggers, but like triggers don't necessarily have to be a bad thing. They are just things to help guide you so that you don't, you don't take a direction that will end up hurting more than you need it to. So for me, I think that like my strength and resilience come from the fact that like, yes, this is a part of my identity. Yes, it has shaped me and like stripped me down and like been some of the worst memories in my life. But like, it's also been like such a beautiful catalyst for helping me create a base into being a really healthy human being and really thinking about myself before I think about other people. I have to think about when I walk into when I decide to make a decision, maybe it's to go to a party at 1 a.m. Like, I have to think about myself first. Is this going to mess up my sleep? And will that then trigger me into having an episode? And is that worth it? And if it's not, then I'm going to go home at 12 and I'm going to say, sorry, I can't come to this party. And like the people that receive that, I would hope would respect it. So all of that to say, like, in this base that it has helped me build, I feel like I've been able to flourish on top of it. And not only say, I live my life in the fullest of ways that I can, but I can still do things that you might think, oh, what the heck, how's that possible? And then it's like, if I can do that, I think that so many other people can find their different ways of doing it. And I'll just give you a tangible example. Like, some of my triggers are like extreme fatigue or like very negative sleep or no sleep. And in my senior year of college, that summer when COVID hit, I wasn't able to get any internships or anything like that. And so I said, how can I grow? And I said, I want to build my mental toughness. And I also want to build my physical toughness. I think those go hand in hand. So I said, I'm going to train for a marathon. Like, so spontaneously. I was not a runner. I was a dancer. I started dancing in college. I didn't even know how to run like the use of your muscles like vertically when you run versus horizontally when you dance. And so
that I've never thought about that. Yeah.
Either.
I'm gonna be like thinking about that when I'm running and like, okay, no vertical.
The planes.
Yeah.
We're just gonna end up doing the robot.
Yeah. The planes of running. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And I just said, no, I'm going to do it. So I Googled how to run a marathon. I bought some shoes. I just started like 1 mile a day. Then it like, obviously, blah, 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 piled up.
The rest.
And then I actually ran, 26 point whatever miles. And in November of my senior year, while I was, doing college things, and I look back and I'm like, how did my body do that? And how did I not get sick? And how was I able to just push through the mental anxiety around like what will happen if I push my body too much, and will that be worth it? So yeah. I hope that gives you some context.
It does. Yes, it definitely does. I think too, for our listeners I think when I was listening to both of you, the thing that, again, I'm gonna tie in the differences and the similarities, but the underlying, I think, lessons learned there of how you can take something that is very painful, very centric to a person and their identity, and then choose to grow from that. I think that's a very powerful choice. And that's something that I've had to learn of how can you, in the moment, I feel like when you're really in the thick of things, when you're in a dark place in your life, it is very individualized. The scope is very small. And so I think part of that process of healing is then to have that scope get a little bit wider and wider, and then see how that life event, that object, that person, how you get hopefully a little bit more distance or or more experience around it, then can help you grow and like really shape your perspective. And it sounds like for both of you, the choice to then do that is, I feel like it, just knowing you both from like a year now has been so, like, I see that in your every day to day actions of like, you are both at the same time like very kind and very outward in helping other people, like, what do you need, how can I help you, but you also are very aware and centric to your own personalities. And I feel like that's something that I don't want to say rare, but it's very difficult to come by at our age. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
I feel like a lot of people at our age right now, it's like we're used to becoming like those chameleons, and we're like, it's all about matching energy, which is I'm also a huge fan of, because like if you give me your 100%, I'm gonna give you your 100% back, 100% right back. But also it's like being able to remain in that your centric individual while being immersed into an environment of others, and not maybe succumbing to certain things that are at a cost of your actual morals, or like that are rooted in your true identity. I know I struggled with that, and it was like I was constantly shifting colors to reflect moods of different people in my life, and that's also where like identity became like a crisis, because I wasn't sure what parts of me only existed for me, rather than existing for the people that I surrounded myself with, whether that being them being good people or people I probably shouldn't have spent so much time with. But yeah, I do think that's a problem. I think that's a great point, Mariah.
Have you struggled with that yourself?
Yeah, I think so. For me, I mean, the process of, in a very short time period, I also, similar to you with your friend Owen, lost someone close to me, and they died by suicide. And so within a couple months of that life event happening, I also got injured, like my personality in rowing. It was so centric to, I'm such a driven, like motivated person, and athletics was a way for me to showcase how much of a hard worker I was. And so when I got injured, that the dynamics very much shifted of like, there's not really a, like, you're not getting validation from coaches and teammates and all of that. And I very much sought to have validation from others, like me giving it to myself, it was zero, if not negative. And so that's what was such a catalyst for me being injured. And then I also had a very, very close friend. A lot was going on with her. She was not in a great mental space. And so from all of those happening in like, I think it was about like a 3-month time span, that's kind of what sent me into my own world and closed off a lot of people, even though from like the outside, I would say I was still a pretty similar person, but I really had to examine and like get myself to a point where I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I have to be super reflective. Why is this so monumental for me? Like really understanding myself as a whole. And then now, because I am far enough away from those life events and I've gotten the help that I needed, like talk to therapists and go to therapy and talk to teammates and family and friends, I can now see like where I went wrong in those situations and like had bad habits for myself and how not to get myself back in that rabbit hole of like negative self-talk and having bad behaviors that don't help me in my mentality. Like I know how to put up those boundaries because of specific events. And so I say like very much I relate in that the lessons learned, damn, they were painful, but I can now look back on them with gratitude, saying like, I now know in those specific moments, like the person who I was, and if those moments come up again, I know how to be better because I know like the person that has evolved because of those events. So I sometimes look back on them and I'm like, damn, I wish that didn't happen because it's painful, right? Like we want to avoid pain. But then I catch myself and I'm like, no, because you wouldn't be the same person. Like I probably wouldn't be here with this podcast, maybe talking to you two, like bonding over it, right? So I definitely do relate. And I appreciate both of you sharing, you asking the same question to me as well, because the vulnerability aspect of like sharing and being so brave and putting up those boundaries, it is difficult. And I hope anyone who's listening to this podcast, it's part of the reason I started it, like goes to the LUMA Volume 1, like I hope if they ever cross like any of our paths, they find maybe hopefully not a similarity in the pain there, but in the growth factor that comes after it.
Yes. Yeah. And you can't have like one without the other.
No. Yeah.
And what a beautiful, like multifaceted, dynamic, like stream of thoughts that you just shared. That to me just seems like a Mariah moment of reckoning.
Yes.
Like, and I love that for you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think that like your ability to be able to pinpoint those bad habits or those toxic traits is hard work within itself. And that's discipline. So all those values or skills that you valued so highly when you were younger, but sought like the validation from others, like really like you just were able to turn inward and give that to yourself. Yeah. And I think that's so powerful. And like what you said about pain, because unfortunately pain does bring out the most growth, and growth happens when we are outside that comfort zone, when we're exploring uncharted waters. But I've learned, I think that's another reason how I've been able to become more self-aware than I have been in the past, is just being able to realize if that never happened, I would never be this Lexi. And I love this Lexi. So I'm grateful for that moment, although painful, it has brought me here today. So I echo what you just said. And yeah.
Oh my gosh, can I say one more?
Oh my God.
No,
we're gonna keep going with all of this because it's too good.
I just feel like both of what you just shared is self-care in like the most pure of forms. Like it is self-care to like reflect and say like what's serving me and what's not, and like I need to do this by myself, for myself. Like I'm not gonna rely on anyone else first. Like
and that's not selfish.
No,
it's not selfish.
It's not. And like you protecting your energy and your time and having like the utmost respect for the current person you are with the context of the past person that you are is self-care and self-love. Like I just think that that's like an aspect of self-love / self-care that I don't really see on social media and being promoted, because it requires a lot more digging. It requires more like rawness and like perhaps ugliness to appear first before you see anything else. But like doing the hard work for yourself by yourself is always worth it. Always worth it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. It's actually a very relevant topic of on the podcast as well. We had Corey, who's an awesome human being, and he like brought up the fact, he was like, self-help is bullshit, because you can read and like surface level, but it's like really the deep dive on like reflection on your own persona that will make the impact, right? So like I feel like there's on social media, there's like the how to help yourself, how to improve your habits, like work out, better diet, like drink all of that. Yeah, drink more water, like, and all your problems go away. Like you're not doing enough.
It's your most generic version of healthy lifestyle question mark.
And so for all that, I feel like we get like this weird dichotomy of like we're fed so much like information and like surface level education, but really where all the work begins and like really has an impact is when you're diving in, like whatever that looks like to you, whether it's with therapists, whether it's with loved ones, whether it's internally, like in a journal, anything, like wherever you're doing that work, that's where I feel like you become the person that like the better version of yourself, or like understand your previous one to then know like your present persona.
Yes. And I feel like, and I can kind of bring this into like LUMA a little bit, because what you're sharing to me, like very much has like a tie to this concept of like inputs versus outputs. And like, for me, I've shared this with you before. Inputs are like consuming media, consuming food, listening to others, like anything that you can absorb, whether that be physically or mentally or emotionally, that's inputs. Outputs is creating, outputs is processing, outputs is releasing, outputs is like crying, creating poetry, making something, telling someone something that you need to get off your chest. And so like what you share just makes me think of like, how do you balance the inputs versus outputs? Like if you have too many inputs, in my opinion, like you just get overwhelmed and you feel uncomfortably full and
your voice becomes lost.
Yes. And if you have too many outputs, then you lack inspiration and you're not going out into the world. You're just waiting for things to come to you. And with LUMA, like we've done such a great job of just trying to maintain a balance of like, yes, we're doing this for the community, but we also have like our personal whys, but we also want to amplify the muses, and we also want to like create, but we also don't want to be the only ones creating.
It's multi-layered.
So there's there's so much balance there.
And I think I want to echo what Sophie said too, because the inputs and outputs and like the voices and like your voice and like your people's voice, and it matters. All of it matters. And it's like Sophie said, it's about knowing that balance. And so I think I want to also credit like what's really cool about like the similarities between your podcast and LUMA is that this is our own words. Like these are coming from our mouths. And well, no, duh. That's a bar. But like the same thing with LUMA, like we interview these individuals who embody our LUMA values, and we pull all that content together and form this kind of final excerpt of everything that they have said in their excerpt, but like kind of condensed into a story form, but verbatim from what they've said in their interviews, because we don't want our voice to outdrown theirs. And when they tell their story, because it's not really about LUMA, like LUMA solely is the platform that amplifies like these voices of the people. So it is a great way though for me and Sophie to be able to interview these muses. We refer to them as our muses, because our voice is heard too in the interview, and that's when that bond happens, because like they're being vulnerable, which allows us to be vulnerable, and human connection just forms even further there. But I'm gonna stop talking.
Amazing.
No, never. That's not allowed. No self-censoring on this podcast. No, I think that's beautiful, and that speaks to the intentionality. And I wanted to dive into this because I feel like, I am like such a supporter of both of you, and I've been like on the inside of LUMA, helping with the photo shoot, and like just knowing you guys while you've been working on the like working up to the gallery. And so I feel like sometimes I forget, I'm like, oh, like I know so much about LUMA just because of my involvement.
Shout out to Mariah for really helping.
Oh, thank you.
She's been such a huge help.
I did not plan that, but I will take it. But so like I want to really emphasize this to the listeners, because I think the intentionality behind LUMA and just the way that both of you go about life is so special. And it really like creates that space for vulnerability and connection, because some of these muses you're meeting for the first time, like, so which is also so special, which we'll get into. But I wanted to ask you both, like, because you are in such a vulnerable space creating LUMA, like, were there any hesitancies or worries when you're like asking these muses to share their stories, and or like that facet of, was there any worries? But then also, how did you both like work with each other to make sure that you were both comfortable with like your vulnerability and sharing? And like, was it ever difficult to kind of like express your own vulnerability in all of that?
That's a great question. You need to take a moment.
Please do.
I do have something. Personally, like, I never felt like I struggled with opening up with our muses. And I don't know if it's just because they're like simply soulful individuals, and they're just, their presence itself is very calming, and or if it was just the fact that they were so brave in their rawness of like who they were, and they were so unapologetically them, which is how they should be and how they should feel. And so it's almost like hearing them own their story in turn empowered me to like further like embrace mine and like amplify mine. And so these muses actually, they not once did they hesitate when we did ask like these questions. They took a moment maybe to reflect, to like answer these reflexive, soulful questions. Like I'm just going to give an example. So like one of our questions would be, what does the fragility of life mean to you? Also, another one would be, how were you able to deem yourself worthy in a situation that deemed you invisible? And so this was the first time they were hearing these questions too. And so it obviously could come as a shock, but they collected themselves and they just spoke their truth. And I think that was one of the most empowering moments. And I love LUMA in its whole aspect, but I think the interviews is where I feel the most alive, aside from creating the content as well, like sponsoring or showing or showcasing them. But it's just they're powerful. They're the power in them revealing who they were.
Period. Exclamation mark.
That's so cool, like to hear you say that, because like we'll see at the gallery, we'll see like the final piece, but knowing like every step of the way, kind of like the thoughts, everything, like the feelings, the takeaways of each step is really cool to hear.
It's been such a journey too throughout that, because we have had to pivot so much. And you know what, Mariah, I'm gonna be completely honest. Like, when I first started seeing obstacles pop up with LUMA, they scared me, and they made me feel like, oh, another one. Like, how are we gonna do this? And I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I almost didn't have the confidence in myself to know that I was going to be able to help find a solution. I was just like, I don't know what we're gonna do. I need to call up Chris, like on the board. I need to talk about this in 2 hours with him, and then we're gonna have to maybe find some. But I literally didn't know. And so I think one of the biggest, obstacles that popped into my mind was when we started with a team of 4, not including our board. And then due to very valid reasons, we ended 2021 with 2, aka Lex and I. And we said, and what happened was, like, the original vision, I'm going to just roll it back a little bit. The original vision was just to host one art gallery event, scrappy community, like, let's just do it. And then it became, let's create a nonprofit and let's hub the first art gallery of many underneath that. So the scope just grew so much. So when 2 people, when the team gets cut down in half, that's scary. Like, how are we gonna, the workload, how are we gonna?
And you would think that would have slowed us. I was like, what? And you would think that would have slowed us, or like made us like turn away out of fear of like rejection, or just like, like the workload. And there was a lot. Like there was a lot, but I had Sophie. And Sophie had me. And I'm so grateful I found like a being who can simultaneously exist as my best friend and the best work wife ever. Because I think we balance each other out very well. We're very similar in the ways that it matters. Like I never have to worry if Sophie is going to hold up her end of the deal, or like output as much as she says she's going to do. That's never a worry in my mind. And similarly, like with me, that's what I I'm kidding. It's like the people can't see you not.
She's agreeing.
But and so it's really possible because of the girl sitting next to me. And I'm grateful.
I'm so good.
I'm so blessed in this witness that. Such a love family.
Sophie and I do profess our love to each other, like after every meeting.
You have to.
Naturally. It's like not planned. It just happens.
And we somehow can find new things to say every time. Like we never run out.
That's so special.
But going back.
That was a huge obstacle that we just, in the moment, we had a few conversations where we were like, we're not sure how this will work. Like maybe we do need to look for new people to join our team. But then we said, no, we're gonna do it and try our best. And then we're gonna pivot along the way. And we've pivoted every single step along the way. And there've been other things that have popped up. And not once have we like fallen down. Like we have continued to push. And that's the power of like working with the right people. Like as long as you're with the right people, like we are going to be able to accomplish exactly what we want. And the very other thing that popped into my head based on your beautifully worded question was we also, when we thought about, LUMA's mission is like quite large, and we are just trying to do our first event. So it's not going to be perfect. And we originally had the idea of having like separate categories of types of people.
Mm-hmm.
So we had like working professionals category, refugees category, LGBTQ plus category, because the intention was to get representation of different groups, to amplify, groups that, maybe don't get like the attention that they deserve.
Yeah.
But what we learned along the way is that really anyone, every human is like a holistic being, and their identities are intersectional. And so it just totally changed the scope of the project to go from these like kind of rigid categories and trying to figure out where people, could go. But like, let's say someone identified as LGBTQ plus and is also a refugee. It's like,
where do you
and you cannot restrict a person to one identity or the other, because like there's so much more than that. And so the vision shifted, and we wanted to grab like indie in a snapshot. And so we tapped into our personal and professional networks for these muses, and what we were able to find was just like simply like beautiful, like within their stories, and we really wanted to do like right by them. And so Sophie and I decided to upscale our vision and really just pick a central theme to their story and combine that with photography and shadow work photography, specifically like with our LUMA gradient colors. And we're that the final photograph and the final text excerpt from their interview will be shown in our LUMA Volume 1 gallery. So the first gallery that will ever launch, or that will ever be hosted by LUMA, will happen this June 25th and 26th at 1,000 Words Gallery on the east side of Indy. And you really should check out these muses, because they're wonderful people, and their stories will touch your soul, because they've touched all of ours. And and
you got to like meet all of the muses. You were the first person that they interacted with.
And let me say, they were so grateful that you were their first face.
I was so happy to be there too. Like, it was so much fun, and this is I wanted to talk to you both about this, because like I feel like the photo shoot is perhaps like the first time of like seeing the embodiment like visually, because you have like the interviews beforehand, and that's of course the like text, the oral presentation like through the interviews, but the visual component of the expression, like the photo shoot, is kind of like it, right? Like you did the prep work and a vision, but like having the actual muses in the space, just from my perspective, was so cool to like see it all come to life. And I loved meeting the muses. Like, I feel like I'm connected to them, like,
absolutely,
and LUMA, and I can't wait for the general public, of course, to see that. But I wanted to ask, before we get into like the photo shoot, what's like the methodology behind how you found muses? Like, I of course know the stories, so I'm asking you, you both this for our listeners, of like when you were posing the question for yourself or both of yourselves, of like how you're going to go about finding these muses. I know you'd mentioned like the categorization, and that got that was pivoted away from. So if you could even like put like an umbrella of like the methodology or the like reasoning behind why you went with like the muses that you have chosen, are you able to like summarize that all?
Yes, I just give me 1 second. I do want to, I want to say that it's funny, because I think we kind of touched upon this earlier in this podcast, and it was about knowing that you're your best self when you're with like the best people like you can be around. And so when we all like reached out through our personal network, we found like these inspirational humans that had a story, and had it been impacted, it also impacted others in the process. But we're also just like genuine human beings. And I think it's almost ironic, because it's like, it speaks to the truth. Like who you spend the most time with is like who you end up being like. And so the people that we use through our network, I would trust with my life. Like Jan, for example, he's also on our LUMA team.
Yeah.
He was the one who looped in one of our muses named Arlette. And she just, a little brief snapshot of her, she was originally born in Rwanda, and then moved to Kenya, was raised there for a little bit, and then moved to the States. And so her story encompasses that entire journey, and of course the internal journey that she experienced in herself. But Jan himself is actually a refugee as well. And so it's from just Burma. Like yes, from Burma. And so I think that recognizing a genuine whole human being who acts with intentionality, who is resilient within their day-to-day actions, or even like their overall life actions, they'll more than likely they'll have people who are like them. And so I think that's it was almost sporadic, and if I'm being completely honest,
please do.
Finding these muses, because we did try to like categorize them originally, and then like that just didn't work. We were also very new to the area, and so we really looked deep into the arts community. We used like our personal friend and board member, Chris Smith, his network as well, to try to find other people. We randomly chose people off the street in Fountain Square. Shout out Fountain Square.
We were like, all right, we need 2 strangers today. We just walked around and
asking, and the worst thing they could say is no, right?
But then they both said yes.
And then you're like, okay, now we're done.
So if I'm being honest, it's just like there was no like method necessarily to our madness. We just happened to be in the right space at the right time, and we had the honor and privilege of amplifying these very 7 special people. And
I would add on that it was not only all of that, and someone who was willing to share it with the world. Because some people aren't ready, but all of these individuals were open and willing to be open. And so that it wasn't hard to get them to open up. It was like the way they already talked about life, the way they already talked about themselves, the way they treated people, that was already like so clean and clear. And then like when we were finding our last 2 interviewees, it was Nadia Issa and King Rhodes, both phenomenal individuals. I was just like, I had already spent a little bit of time with them, and I was like, they have unique stories, yes. The way they talk about life and their values and how they navigate this world is just perfect. And it's just exactly like what we want to like also do. So it just was like a no-brainer. Like, duh, I need to reach out to them and be like, hey, do you have time to be interviewed like on a Sunday? I don't know. Lex, what are your thoughts on like how you want this process to maybe be more intentional or more streamlined moving forward?
I think that moving forward, his LUMA Volume 1 is only the first, right? And the first of many. And so I think that moving forward, Sophie and I have talked about this. We think about having, or we're going to have a centralized theme to each volume, subsequently to LUMA Volume 1. And so maybe LUMA Volume 2 would be education centered. And so I think that it would really be a case by case basis, in all honesty, because we would want to see the overarching theme, as well as like what we want to amplify within that certain theme. So it's like the education system. Are we going to interview across the generations? Are we going to interview like at an administration level and a student level, as a parent of current students in the school system? Like there's so many different perspectives and takes that we can take on it. And so I think that our methodology will be ever changing. And I think that's beautiful, because I think it doesn't stop LUMA from evolving in any one way or becoming too redundant in how we maybe amplify these voices. Because ideally, like Sophie and I have also spoken about using different art mediums throughout the different volumes. So like right now, like I said, Volume 1 will have photography, sound design, and videography. Maybe the next volume will be photography and spoken word or dance or yes, absolutely.
She was
horizontal running,
not vertical,
and vertical dancing. No.
Are you trying to imagine vertical dancing? Okay,
we gotta switch it up. I'll show you later. You can't get video evidence of that one. No, I think that's beautiful. Like kind of it makes it very relatable, I think, like of your like you're going out there, you're seeing what you kind of feel in the moment and like running with it. Like you don't have to be so locked down to a process. That's what kind of why I wanted to ask a question, because just knowing your like thought process of how you approach it is very much like feelings oriented of like it felt right.
It did.
And so that's the message I would love, or one of the messages that I would love to impart on listeners is like, you don't have to like overthink. If you have something like that you want to explore, you don't have to be so structured in it. You can just like start experimenting and like dipping, getting your toes wet in the water, like seeing like, oh, just walk along Fountain Square, which is a neighborhood in Indianapolis. Like you can just walk and see like who who in your personal network you could reach out to and like has a story and would be willing to share their time. So I think it makes it very real, like that whole process, that methodology, right? Like it doesn't have to be so rigid. It can be very fluid. And I think that's beautiful. And I think something that also is beautiful was the photo shoot that we both had. So I purposefully, knowing that after the photo shoot, after like the weekend, I purposefully restricted myself in like asking what your guys' takeaways were, because I wanted it to be during this conversation. So so I wanted to hear both of your takeaways. I'll share mine as well, but I want to pose and not lead you guys into what my thoughts are.
Okay, fair.
So whoever wants to take that first.
Sure. I did the very best that I could given my role and just planning as much as possible. We had a test shoot. We had a pre-meeting to the test shoot to plan out every single shot we wanted to capture, the silhouettes, the lighting, the everything.
Specific to each muse, like everything, very detailed, very detailed.
Very opposite of the methodology. Very planned.
There needs to be structure somewhere.
Exactly. Yes.
We gotta have structure.
That's why they're back to back. See the parallels. Okay.
There's duality in everything.
Say it again. So yes, we had the test shoot. Then we had all these meetings after the test shoot to figure out what we wanted to do for the final shoot. Then it was, okay, it doesn't just have to be Lex and the main team and our board doing this. We can bring in other volunteers. And so it was really awesome to see people in Orr Fellowship like yourself say, I want to help. How can I help?
And other creatives to like just jump at the opportunity to like create for like another like grander like entity.
Yes.
Just like so and still have that like piece of who they are as an artist be attached to it. So I think that was really exciting as well.
So we got to bring you in and a few other really amazing individuals. And so all this prep, it was like on my end, it was just like, when do people need to get here by what time? What do they need to wear? What do they need to bring? On the muse side, Lex took lead on that. I took the lead on like kind of the staff. I don't know, the team side. Yeah. And so then when we got there though, I was like, okay, I can relax and just enjoy and be present and soak this up, because this is like a once in a, like we can never replicate this. Never. It can't, because all of our volumes will have different muses and maybe we'll be in different places and the shots will be different.
And it won't be the first one.
So this is uniquely this. And so for me, a personal takeaway was we did the work. Now it's time to have fun and just be in the moment. And so there are times when, maybe I should have been like helping move things around, but I was in the corner with Chris, just like
tying strings.
Tying
strings on
it. Was very cute.
On staff.
It was very cute.
But the soulful exuberance, like, you have to find enjoyment in like even like the most intense like processes or the intense events, because there is beauty in that. And there is always like little sparks of joy. And I had so much fun. Like with Sophie, like Sophie said, I had so much fun shooting all of our different muses, like in their different poses. And I do want to like echo what Sophie said too about the pre-meeting. And it was just almost like getting that team of creatives together to really like plan out like how this day is going to be, what colors are going to be for each muse, or what pose are they going to be, like which like line do we want to amplify the most. Having like the power of having all those creators in this room, like thinking about the same end goal while having in the back of their mind what LUMA really stands for, like what our main goals are, what our values are, was like almost like watching magic happen. Because the fast rate, like these ideas were coming off of, and one idea would spark another idea, would spark an even grander idea. And then like, we'd all come together and like pick our favorite. And I think that we're all very like strong-willed people, and we're headstrong, and we're independent, and we're also passionate. And so it is possible for, as those powerful individuals such as ourselves, to be in that room, like working towards the same end goal without butting heads toward each other. And I think it was just like the strength of being on the same wavelength. And that definitely, that high carried into our actual photo shoot, which was amazing. And there was never at one point where I felt like things were out of control. And we had fun with it, for sure.
Yeah. And I'll just say one more. I would say on a external lens, it was the fact that we curated this experience, and like I feel like each person had their own experience within the experience, which is so unique if you think about it. It's like for Lex and I, it was about, our well, I won't speak for you, but I mean, for us, it was like,
you know me.
True. It was like, we need to get these art pieces shot, and so printed out and ready for our upcoming event. That was like the core.
Yeah.
For other people, it was maybe to experience something that they hadn't before and be able to like play a tangible hand in like these final pieces. Like it was different for each person. And I think like even the muses, like they came in and they felt like models. They felt cherished and rooted for. And it's like they had an audience, but they also didn't, like we were teaching them too. So it was like they had their own experience. How cool is it that every single person like has their own like individualized like moments of like love, joy, fun, learning, all of that. And my favorite part was Jared Thompson's. Actually, I don't know if it was my favorite, but because they were all so good, so I can't compare. But he came in and we didn't have to teach him how to pose. We didn't have to silhouette him at all. The lighting was already done. He came in, he brought his saxophone, and he just played.
And it was like you could hear a pin drop when he was playing, like in that studio. And we were like dancing previously, like we were blasting our own playlist, and everyone, it was just like, although we were all firing at different frequencies in that same environment, in that one moment, I felt like we were all just like together, experiencing the exact same thing, except taking our own like perspective on it, of course, because like what Sophie says, it's the little pieces that make the bigger picture. And that was one of my favorite parts too. What was your favorite part? What are your takeaways?
Oh yeah, no, I do have a different perspective from you both. Like just from my like my role, like what I was helping with that day. But I do like Jared, and he was like the last muse too. So it was like a nice little like gift, like packaging it up, what's the word I'm looking for? Like very, very wholesome, like tangible moment of just being like a sigh of relief. Like it was kind of like, a nice little like, it's done. Like it like had a nice finite end with literally like music. Like that's a wrap, like music playing. It was very special. I know like myself too, I haven't been in a photo shoot ever. And so like, it was just
you should be though, because you're like a model. So
please. But it was just like so fun, like just such a fun environment, and like I love your guys' colors. But it was I think like if I had to pinpoint, like one of my strongest takeaways was just like the creative energy in the room of like, we had of course like Aaron and Sam, who are other Orr Fellows, like they were contributing, they're both creators as well. And then Danielle, like the photographer, she was so zoned in on like what she was doing too. You guys both, like Jan as well, like filling your, like looking at the whole picture, like seeing how it's gonna come together. And so for me, it was like a lot of fun, because I feel like in both of you, I could see like the fun that you were having, and like the stress of planning it was like not, I won't say evaporated, but like it looked like it was, pretty
dang close.
Pretty minimal. She was not let in. And so it was just so fun to like play the role of being able to like help alleviate some of that stress and like help. make the vision that you both had set forward happen. And like, I feel like everyone kind of understood their part and like how to make that all happen. And so it's just like very, like, you could just like feel it in the air of like everyone just being like so vibey and like contributing to the like creative or the intentional effort of like each little role that you have, that everyone was playing. And it was so like cool to see just like, you know, the background of it all.
You know, I want to add too, I think that the stress did like seem to evaporate for Sophie and I, because we had so much confidence in like the team that we had brought to those 2 days. We knew what people were going to be in the room. We knew what everyone's role was, and we were comfortable with letting their creative autonomy flow, because they're more than capable, they're more than passionate about it, and they're more than awe-inspiring. Like it's great. And so like being able to like trust that team to produce like what you're imagining and like what you envision like your final product to be is just such a great feeling, and it is a sigh of relief. So I can say that because of the team that we had built, my stress was almost like gone by the 2 days. It was like almost like the jitteries at first. Like I was nervous, like I wanted everything to go perfectly, but like perfection is an illusion, like as it is. And so I'm just, needless to say, more than satisfied with how everything turned out, and beyond excited for like the next time we have to do something like this again to curate this art.
I like also exclamation mark on Lex, exclamation mark on yours, Mariah. Bars. It like makes my heart warm and fuzzy to hear you share that, because I'm gonna oh, wait, that's so cute. Do you see the camera? Baby hearts. Because you're such a caring individual, and so you knew like your contributions and your presence truly added so much.
And
made
like difference.
And like I would have been stressed if, I'm gonna be honest, I would have been stressed if no one would, like if I had to greet every muse and be the one who sat them down and eased them into things, because my mind would have been 5 million other places, and like you can't predict the timing of that. Like I would have been stretched. So like I hope you know that like you were so appreciated. And
thank you.
You had such a vital role. And you still do. Like there's always a place in LUMA for you because of like your creative spirit, and you're just like your personality. And Mariah, you're great.
Oh,
and,
thank you.
Like,
oh my gosh.
And like this whole podcast that like you're building, and that like, oh my gosh, like I can't wait to see the mountains will move with this. And you already are. And so yes, please, like there's always space for you in our LUMA team.
Thank you. I'll always be there, of course. No, I think that feeds really, really nicely in kind of like a takeaway or like a wrap up of this episode of like the mission statement of LUMA, and both of you both of you as people of, I feel like, or what I'm curious about is that for me, like my creative expression, whether that is through like music growing up or like journaling or this podcast, is like, I feel like it does such wonderful things for my mental health to have creative outlets. And I feel like that's maybe what LUMA does for you both as well. And I know you both write your own poetry, but so I would love to, one, have you both share your whys of LUMA, but also what like message would you like to say to someone who is perhaps nervous or hesitant or has any detractors in their mind as far as like, oh, they shouldn't pursue, or like no one would, I don't know, listen to their music or like their art. What would you kind of like impart, having gone through this whole process of almost a year, like starting a nonprofit centered around creativity? Like, how would you encourage someone who is perhaps has negative self-talk towards their own creative persona?
That is such a powerful question. Wow. And very thought-invoking. Wow. So like you said, like I do write poetry, and one line that comes to mind when asked that question is to be patient as you move at your own pace, because your existence begins and ends with you and only you. And I think we get so like overwhelmed and caught up with who everyone else is and who everyone else thinks we are, rather than focusing on who we are and what we can do. And so I think that when you really provide yourself with that self-love and you continuously partake in that internal reflection, you learn your strengths and you learn your weaknesses, which only empower you to get better and better and better. And it's scary. It really is. Like, you stepping out of your comfort zone, like you never know what's going to happen. You never know what you're going to experience, the pain you inflict on yourself. But when you do take that first step, because one step is still moving in the right direction, you'll realize that you stepped into a whole different world. And if you keep moving and you keep creating your own reality, because we do have the power to do that, because your perspective really is what creates how you live to your day-to-day life. And so I think that when you finally hush those demons that are constantly nagging at like the parts of you that beg to be better, use that as your rocket fuel. Because if you focus too much on what you're not good at, you'll never be able to properly tap into what you are good at. And if you are a painter, chances are nobody can paint the way you can paint. Sophie and I, although we are both poets, have very different styles of poetry, yet still her poetry still invokes goosebumps every single time. Like I read it. And my poetry obviously like makes me feel a certain way. And I think that's like, especially if you're creative in the arts community, there's no law to art. There's no specific rules, because art is ever flowing, ever changing. It's what you make it to be. There's no specific definition, because it's an expression of yourself and using your creative power and your creative ability. And so I think that could be channeled in any avenue of your life.
Yes.
Whether growing in relationships, looking at them as relationships rather than transactions or exchanges, being intentional in that, and also just believing in yourself, because like you can accomplish great things when you finally tell yourself that you are enough, and you are enough from the moment you took your first breath of air. There is nothing more that you've done to deserve that worthiness and to feel that love than to just be existing. So when you finally, I think, wake up to that reality, I think you'll start to manifest some pretty powerful things. So
full body chills. Gosh, why do you have to do it to us like that? Wow. I mean, I have very similar thoughts to Lex. I also have a few like slightly different ones. I think when I look back on how I pursue passion projects, which I have done since honestly I was a kid, from like I used to take geodes and crack them on my sidewalk and then make jewelry out of them.
That's
like
so
super
cute.
glue.
Oh my gosh, I was doing That's so cute.
Bring it back.
Literally, I have like earrings and necklaces and stuff I make for my mom.
I must see your rock jewelry.
Literally. That's so funny.
I used to bring those to school and then sell them during lunch.
An entrepreneur.
I made
But
no
she started
profit.
young. But she started young.
Yeah.
We're not.
Never mind.
Oh my God.
Too soon.
So that, to college is when I think my creative outlets and passion projects like boomed with the art gallery.
Yeah.
I started my own podcast then coming to Indy, it was like, at this point, it felt natural to want to do something outside of like what I had to do.
Yeah. Oh my, I literally said that to my friend yesterday.
Yeah.
That's wild. Look at us. Okay.
So I think, but when I look back, now I can say it's very easy for me to say, I want to do a passion project and I'm going to do it and I'm going to make it happen. And I'm going to bring in people and we're going to partner because things are better when they're with people. But if I were to zoom backwards, I don't know if that's the right word, roll backwards. That sounds how right.
Zoom out.
Yeah.
If I were to zoom out and I were to ask my younger self, what helped you take that first step? I think it's creativity, being creative, expressing yourself is a muscle that you have to flex. And there is always fear. The fear is always there. The doubt is always there. But on the other side of doubt, of fear, which happens when you do take those steps, is freedom.
Yeah.
It's freedom. It's freedom to just be and do things and not be bound by the opinions of other people or the opinions or the self-limiting beliefs you impose on yourself. Freedom to me is everything, because the moment you have the ability to pursue and do whatever it is that you want and create whatever it is that you want, the world and the universe just seem to be like limitless. And it seems like you can then have I'm going to bring it back real quick.
Okay.
Manifestation, I believe, like, whether you say something out loud, whether you take one action, whether you write it down, it moves you that much closer to where you want to go and who you want to become. And if you have the freedom to move wherever you want and do what you want to do and feel good about what you're doing and feel yourself growing, like, isn't that like just one of the most amazing feelings ever? And it's more than just like, I made this thing, the end. It's like, I made this thing.
I'm watering it.
Yeah.
Helping it grow.
And then next time I can make this thing because I already knew how to make this thing. And that means I can move towards this. And then it's like your dreams are not that far away. You know?
And it's all a learning process. Like you never stop learning. And I mean, just in this past year, I've learned so much about the nonprofit sphere. And I mean, I was a poli-sci major, for crying out loud. Like, I don't really know too much about business.
Neither do I, honey.
We're learning, aren't we?
Totally, yeah.
But sorry, so if I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
No, but I was just gonna say, actually, no, I totally lost my train of thought. Honesty,
it's been a while. It's okay. It'll come back to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think I said it. The advice would be, flex the muscle and start moving. Do before you think. Say 3, 2, 1, I'm gonna do it. And then dream like bigger than you ever thought you would or you could, because that is just going to be your North Star that helps you like move towards it. It doesn't have to be right here and tangible for you to say, I can do it.
I think it's about like locating your dream and like really like zoning in on that passion, amplifying that passion, or like really like, I mean, it's hard because I told Sophia, I guess, prior to LUMA, that I was just like, I was like trying to figure out like what I could do to like really become proud of myself in like my business endeavors or my professional endeavors. And then she presented me with her project, and I was like telling her, like, this was like maybe like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, Sophie, like, without realizing it, you gave me purpose. Like this was like part of my purpose. And it's just like, but once I found it, it was like full speed ahead. And so it's just like, if you are feeling like at odds, maybe you're not pursuing the correct purpose. Like maybe you're doing it because your mom wants you to do it, or your dad or your best friend pushed you to do it, or you chose a major and now you don't really want to change it for the 3rd time. Guess what? I changed my majors 3 times. It's possible.
It is possible.
So I think it's really just like finding your passion and then being determined enough to pursue it, because it takes hard work. And then I think, humility, and it's just like knowing that you can't accomplish all of this, but not losing sight of who you truly are and what you actually value before maybe you do make it big that one day. So
that's so special. I think that's a great message for our listeners to impart, and I'm so blessed that both of you are so willing to share like just your persona, everything that you've learned up until this point, like through life, through friends, through whatever has been thrown your way, and then how you take that and really channels your energy and your effort and your like kindness, just everything into LUMA. I think it's so beautiful. And for that reason, if both of you could pull up your whys, I think that would be a great thing to leave with our listeners, is have both of you read your poetry and your why of LUMA.
I can go first.
Go ahead.
Okay. Why am I building LUMA? Why am I committed to LUMA? I want to positively ripple a city. I want to bring souls together. I want to amplify voices. I want to create spaces for stories. I want to strip constructs in favor of connection and conversation. Let's talk about hard things. Let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's talk about death, pain, and identity. I am a light. I will create light. LUMA is light. LUMA illuminates. I am LUMA. LUMA is me. An experience can spark thoughts. Thoughts create action. Action creates change. We are the change. I will do my part. I will change what I can. One life, one day, one moment. LUMA lifts me up and I lift LUMA. Why? What a powerful question. I commit to LUMA because I love touching souls. I love sharing light and breathing in darkness. I love the essence of humanity. I will do what I can. For Owen, for those that have left this earth, for those that feel lost or are floating, togetherness is everything. My why.
Togetherness is
Beautiful.
everything.
Thank you.
I promise to get that tattooed on my body one day.
You heard it here,
Yeah.
folks.
You heard it here, folks. Wow. So every time Sophie says that, like she's
Chills.
read it. It's literally like every time it's just chills because it is her authentic why as to like why she's like part of this, like driving this train forward, and inspiring as always.
Thank you.
So this is my why, and it kind of intertwines my vision for LUMA in the near future and years ahead. LUMA, illuminating humanity, the secrets of the universe hidden inside, the constellation of experiences that have shaped and reshaped a soul. Every transformative lesson, every galactic burst, leading to the emergence of a more magnificent being, a force to be reckoned with, and another tale to be told. Magnifying humanity's journey through the light years and the stories of eons to come, the cosmic collisions of souls brought to union by similar meteor showers and individual comet configuration, the shifting and reshifting of solar systems as intimacy incites a bang and our stars align to forge an even grander galaxy. Together, we act as the ultimate guide through the cosmos. With every synced planet orbit and formed connection reveals that the mysteries of life lie within the exchange of energies in our shared stardust composition. We radiate and astound with brilliance and stare in awe as we exist as both the viewer and the view. In union, we unlock the conundrum of space and time as we venture into the infinity of the universe, the existence of LUMA.
Snaps. Yeah, those were both so beautiful. I love you guys so much.
Gosh, we love you.
Oh my gosh, that was so insane.
That happens quite often.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy. I hope the first time that I heard both of you speak to your why, different times, but truly phenomenal. And just hearing them back again, I'm so happy to have them like live in the existence of both of you, like this podcast. Our listeners, I hope that they're equally as touched by both of your pieces as I was for the first time I listened to them. You're both so soulful, incredible people. So I'm so happy that I got the chance to like really dive in. I feel like this is something, Lex, you and I have talked about before, but when you meet people, I feel like you go from that spot from where you meet them and like look forward into the future with them. And so it's so fun for me to like do a deep dive into the past and purposefully create space to like really talk about life-changing moments and opinions and perspective, because I feel like daily life is very quick paced. And so it's so fun to be able to sit down, be able to learn more about both of you, and thank you for taking the time to do so as well, both for our listeners, for me, for each other, for yourselves. I think it's really special, and know that I love you both. I love LUMA. You're such hard workers, just in every aspect of your life, and so passionate about all the work you do. So I hope you take that with you.
Mariah, thank you like for a million things. Like one, for actually creating this space for us to be able to like not only share like our aspects of LUMA, but like share who we are, and for you to also partake in that and to reveal who you are as well. Like we said, like this is like, I can feel like the energy in this room. I can feel like that connection for me. And I already feel mighty close to you guys, and I just even closer in this moment. And so like, thank you so much. And I'm just in awe of you and all that you've done with your podcast. And it's an honor to actually be a part of it. So
one thing that I think Mariah is always consistent about is putting comfortability at the forefront of any human interaction. And
which is why you are our greeter.
Yeah.
I know.
It comes full circle.
It comes full circle. Presents like honey.
Oh, that's
Soothing,
good.
soothing, healing, and comforting.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Okay, right up told about Mariah.
Oh my god. My personal branding just like went up so much.
But I feel equally grateful for you and the fact that you said, I want to bring you on, I want to amplify your voices, like, and you want to see us as we are, and you want to love us and support us. Like, I feel so grateful for that. And I know that you are taking and moving mountains in your realm of life, and our realms of life intersect, right? But like,
we share mountain ranges.
Stop it. Oh my god.
But like,
that was so good.
yeah, it was us a straight bar. But like, it's amazing to see all that you do and how you go about not only cultivating things that are for you with your passion projects, with the self-love and growth and the habits and the behaviors, but that you want to let people into your headspace along the way. And you also want to empower them. And that is so incredibly beautiful. And and beautiful is not, it is the right word, but a better word is like, you have a gift. And I hope that you continue to give it to that.
Oh, that's Sophie's word.
Give it to all these amazing people who have been able to be on your podcast and just interact with you in day-to-day life.
Oh, thank you. I will take, all of that moving forward. You both make me feel so good. So I love you both.
We love you.
Love you
so much.
Aww.
Come check us out at lumagalleries.org and luma.galleries on Instagram. And what is our LinkedIn? So,
well, you can just
LUMA
search
Galleries.
LUMA Galleries.
Galleries will pop up.
Yeah, and please come out to Volume 1 in June 25th and 26th of 2022. Yes. And if you, if you're listening, we just love to have you join our journey and
RSVP
we
now.
appreciate you.
Yeah. I'll make sure the link is on our socials and the episode description as well for our listeners. All right.
Thank you.
Adios.
Bye.
Thank you.